Hi everyone, Jonathan Ferguson here again. We are back with What Is This Weapon in a new format, as you can see, with a splendid new backdrop. Well, it's an old backdrop, but it's new to you. And quite an exciting beginning to this revival. I have a not that suspicious package to share with you here. It's pretty obvious what this is going to be if you've been following along, but we're extremely proud of what's in here. Let's open it up if we can. So having destroyed the packaging here, we can slide this out from the side, and it is in fact what you've all been expecting, I think. This is our silver YouTube plaque for 100,000 subscribers, and of course we have those 100,000 subscribers to thank very much for letting us achieve this. Can't tell you how proud I am that we have one of these, and my part in that, but also everyone that's been watching, liking, subscribing, all of that YouTube stuff. We've got one of these. Thank you so much. Right, so unboxing video out of the way, but I am going to leave this prominently on the table. Hopefully it won't distract too much from the subject of today's What Is This Weapon? We have two of them, as you can see. We actually have 6 of them in total. One's on display here at Leeds. If you visit us, you'll be able to see it on display, albeit behind glass. Now this is Le Protector, which is a very interesting French design for a self-defense pistol. It's a very unconventional design for a pistol, as you can see. I should say right off the bat that there is a Forgotten Weapons video on this generic type, but it focuses on the American descendant of this, which is a little bit different, a little bit bigger. Ian does cover the French original, but hopefully I can add a little bit to that. So this was the invention of a chap called Turbiaux, Jacques-Edmond Turbiaux, of Paris, and those details are actually on the gun. So we have the name of the type, Le Protector. We have System E Turbiaux, which is using his middle initial. And we also have markings here for Brevet, SG, DG, En France, L'Étranger, and Paris on there as well. And the concept here really, as you could probably sort of intuitively guess, is that these are maybe not substitutes for a pocket watch, but they're meant to be the form factor, if you like, of a pocket watch. Similar diameter, size and weight. In fact, even designed to be carried apparently on a pocket watch chain. And in this case, it's even decorated a bit like a pocket watch. So we'll come back to that in a moment. 2 different sizes here. So the smaller one is in 6.35 millimeter rimfire, that is. And the larger one, substantially larger, is in 8 millimeter. Now there are imperial equivalents for those cartridge types. So 8 millimeter would be 32 rimfire. And then I believe they go up to something like 41, but we don't have any that large. So really quite small bore, close in use, very much for self-defense. And the way you're supposed to hold these, I'll use the larger one so you can see, it's a squeeze design. So pretty much concealed in the hand, which is on the one hand an advantage, but also a disadvantage. So you can't really threaten an assailant with this because they're not going to know that you've got a gun. But then they don't know you've got a gun, so you can get the drop on them in theory. Something that is not widely reported about this, but it's in the patent, is using these like brass knuckles. Not exactly logically the same as brass knuckles, of course, which sit across the knuckles and are for punching with, but if you think about how painful it would be to be struck by the muzzle of the barrel, you'll get an idea of how this might have been used. Not to mention, and this isn't spelled out in the patent, but if you were holding this thing loaded and you punched it into somebody, not only would you get the impact of the punch and the blunt force trauma from this, you then get shot as well. And then you could keep squeezing it for multiple shots, because these are a form of revolver. So if we rotate this lid, this casing, and pop it off, normally there's a little arrow. Well, there is a little arrow. Normally that points in line with the barrel to show that it's locked. So we rotate that until it pops off, and there's a clever retention mechanism in there. What we then have to do, as Ian relates in his video, is to squeeze the mechanism enough that the hammer is removed from this cylinder, effectively. These are a form of turret revolver. They have a sideways cylinder, effectively. Instead of a tubular cylinder that rotates clockwise or potentially anti-clockwise, it rotates laterally, and it has these dished out sections on one face that are driven by the mechanism in here, which we can have a look at separately. So we actually get out of this thing 7 shots. That's a fair bit of firepower to have in the palm of your hand. Now, I mentioned decoration. These things, well, sometimes they have mother of pearl mounted in the cover and the casing, both sides. All of ours have this, I think it's some sort of ebonite, kind of a sort of a shiny black material, but fairly practical material. But this one has been decorated. It's got little discs that are actually soldered, I think, possibly brazed. No, I think lead soldered in. One onto the mechanism side and one onto the casing side. And I believe the material in there is malachite, quite an attractive, naturally occurring material, and turquoise. I believe that's what those are. So somebody, not the company making these, but somebody has gone to the trouble of getting this one decorated. Maybe the retailer that sold it, maybe the owner that purchased it, because it's not a fully professional job. You can see where those have been attached to what would otherwise be just a dished, bare bit of metal. So we also have a safety on here, unsurprisingly. Potentially really quite a dangerous thing to be toting around. Very short-barreled, easy to point in the wrong direction, easy to panic and squeeze and fire a shot when you don't want to. So there is a safety on these, which is a sliding bar. This one is actually not working properly. So we actually have two subtle variations on the same safety system here. The American incarnation of this has a rotary button, and we don't have one to show you. The European version has one of 2 takes on a sliding bar, and all that does, or is supposed to do, is block. There's a little pin on here, and it blocks the trigger grip thing from being able to go far enough to rotate the cylinder, effectively, and cock and fire the weapon. The other, slightly better way of doing it is the same sliding bar and then a pin in the grip trigger, and so sliding the bar over a hole, which I'll show you in close-up, just stops the thing from even moving. So it's a very positive safety. So to use this thing, you would have to, probably with the other hand, reach over, slip off the safety, and then you'd be ready to go. And you would just squeeze to fire. It doesn't take a great deal of pressure to set this thing off. So as I say, potentially a bit dangerous for an early concealed carry pistol. So why might somebody want to carry something like this, large or small version? Well, we have to remember, especially those of us in countries that perhaps have more restrictive firearms laws, in the late 19th century, early 20th century even, when these things are being produced, we have police forces by this time, but they're not everywhere. They don't have the best communication systems. Depending which parts of a certain city you're in, the response time is going to be either slow or non-existent. And so people in European cities really did carry firearms for self-defense. Typically, they would be a small pocket pistol or a handbag pistol, much the same thing really. And what the Protector is an answer to that and a solution to the same problem. So something that you can carry that's always on you, a little bit decorative, maybe a talking point, but ideally it'll be tucked away, no one will even know you have it. But then if you do need to defend yourself, be that from a rabid dog in Paris, which was a big problem at that time, or from a criminal, well, you can pull this thing out. Now the problem there is firearms could be used as a deterrent, and this thing isn't much of a deterrent because what the hell is this thing? If you don't happen to know what it is, it doesn't even look like a gun. It looks like a watch or a makeup compact or something like that. So you'd better be sure that you actually are prepared to use this thing as a deadly weapon to defend yourself with. So these are, I mean, unusual firearms also were bought and collected by people who just wanted them because they were cool, something to show off with. But I've no doubt that a lot of customers who bought these, both the original French version and the American spin-off, the Chicago Palm Protector, I'm sure most of the people who bought them genuinely thought they might use them, and some of them probably did use them. Now, in terms of effectiveness, they seem to be pretty robust and reliable for as far as you would need to use them, which is hopefully never. You're going to get your 6 or 7 shots off, I think, pretty rapidly and pretty effectively. Aiming is obviously a problem. You've got no way of sighting this thing. It is purely instinctive aim, probably at arm's length, using your natural pointing ability to sort of look where you're shooting. Potentially, you might literally try to do point shooting where you're using the natural pointing ability of your finger as your reference point. Looks a bit weird and feels a little dangerous with your finger so close to the muzzle, but you could try to do it that way so that you're squeezing with these fingers and the palm of your hand and you're literally pointing. I think that would improve your chances of hitting your target. There's no prescribed way to use these things and no real sort of safety warnings or anything like that at this time. The more comfortable way to use it is very much like this. And at extremely close range, it's really not going to matter. But I would suggest effective range of this is the effective range of any pistol in a sort of stress situation, which is maybe 10 meters. Yes, pistols are capable out to hundreds of yards in the right hands, but in a panic attack situation, we generally say 10 meters, and there's no reason why this couldn't achieve that despite the lack of sights. The other side of effectiveness, of course, is stopping power, which is a very thorny, controversial term. Now, the 8mm version of this is getting on for what today might be regarded as maybe a minimum self-defense caliber, albeit a very low power load here. So low velocity, small caliber. Is it going to stop your assailant? Perhaps questionable, but then you have multiple shots quite rapidly, which offsets the small caliber. The 6mm, 6.35mm version, considerably more questionable. I mean, that's, getting on for 22 caliber, but with lesser ballistics, because this is an extremely short cartridge to be able to fit in this smaller frame here. So that one I'd say would be pretty questionable, but just like a knife is lethal at phone box distances, so that could be. But I think if you're going to pick one for its effectiveness, it would be the 8mm or perhaps the bigger 41 caliber American spin-off. Right, guys, there we go. That's Le Protector, Mr. Turbiaux's design for a rather unconventional self-defense concealed carry pistol from the 1880s. It's a really wacky design. Easy to forget that these were in fact purchased most likely for serious self-defense purposes, and I'm sure some were used in anger. It's great to be back. Enjoying the new setup. I hope you are as well. And again, thank you so much for helping us to achieve this thing. It really is amazing to be holding one of these, having seen it with other really good channels over the years. We're keen to continue to grow the Royal Armouries YouTube channel, not just the firearms side, but the whole thing. And this is part of that. So, as ever, we have links in the description for our various social media and other outlets, our websites, where you can find out about our museum sites, our events, stuff that's going on, and how you can donate to us to help us out if you'd like to do that. But we don't ever put any pressure on that. We just really appreciate you watching and doing all of that YouTube stuff, liking and subscribing, sharing with your friends. That's probably even more important. And we'll see you again next time with another interesting weapon. Thanks very much.